Good evening, and welcome to Only One United, Talking Reds. Tonight, we're going to be looking at refs, which is my second favourite topic behind Emma Hayes. Honest, no, we'll be good. I've got these two to rein me in anyway. Joining me tonight is Maisie. How you doing, Maisie?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you? And thank you for having me on again.
Yeah, no, it's great. You're like my co-pilot on these things, and it's great to have you back. And Catherine, great to have you on the channel. Really good to have you on.
Well, nice to be on. Thank you for inviting me. And with what's going on with Chelsea today, I think we might end up talking about Emma Hayes at one point because I have it in my notes. It's literally there.
It's I'm not. Yeah, it's a strange one with Chelsea because apparently they seem to be unable to find gaffer tape. That's what we call it over here to cover the free logo. The supply chain issues is the reason why they're still wearing it. Apparently, is the excuse they've given.
You would think they would just make new jerseys and just not brand them on.
Yeah.
Surely there's old Topso from like the 90s tops or whatever doesn't have like a logo, or even before that they could possibly wear.
Well, yeah, I suppose, but then all those old companies would be then going.
Yeah, but some of them don't have like logos.
I've actually done the machine thing, and like you just don't put the logo in. Clear, like you're telling me they don't have a set of jerseys that they could just not add that logo anyway.
Well, I'm glad to see you have as much love about Chelsea as I do. Now, I'm not going to tell you with that brush. I'm sure you're much more even-handed than me. But yeah, no. So tonight, what we're going to look at initially, well, we had to really, was what happened. What happened at the weekend? What happened on Saturday when at 11:30 in the morning, which I'm still not getting. I'm not letting that go. If the football's being played in this country, it shouldn't be in the morning, UK time. That's just a little old thing that I have. Maybe I'm not behind the times.
Well, if it's a professional game, at least.
Well, yeah, this is it. Especially as I had to leave. Not again. I'm not holding this behind me. Instead, I had to leave Manchester at 6 a.m. To get down to Reading, and it was fun. It was fun. But no, I mean, obviously we won 3-1, which is great. But there was an incident in it, and that was what got me and Maisie thinking about referees, because I think when everybody sees what we're referring to, and I think Vix has already mentioned in the comments here that it was so surreal. We were high up in the stands, but couldn't see it was clearly over the line. Well, you'll see what I mean now, and I don't know. We might go into this about possible VAR and goal line technology, but surely you just need eyeballs for this. Let me just show you what I mean.
Hey. Well, that shot, it did actually cross the line, didn't it? From the bouncing down off the crossbar.
I wish we could see where the sideline ref is, because I don't.
We can play it. We can play it again, certainly.
Can we see the back line? The only thing I could see here is if you look at where I used to ref, so I sometimes try to think like, how could this have been missed? Is that where the actual line was? And like, because if there's enough space, she's at an angle, and so if she's not looking, or if she missed the kick, then she could have missed it going in. But that just seems anyway.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we wanted. So we'll play it again. You could to have a look at that because it's always hard if you've only seen it once. Because the other thing you want to look at is look at the linesman, because it's a man in this case, and he's not in line with play, which is another problem.
Hey. Well, that shot, it did actually cross the line, didn't it? From the bouncing down off the crossbar. Comes back to Russo, whose shot took a deflection on its way past Maloney. I think that replay suggests that the badge.
So I tried to include the last bit there because you could see the ref was more straight on. But I mean, what's your views on it, Maisie? We'll obviously go back and forth a bit on it. I mean, you've seen it a couple of times. I think you saw it live. It doesn't get any better, does it?
Yeah, it doesn't get any better. The more you look at it, the more you think, wow, what's going on here? When I actually first seen the goal on the TV, I actually couldn't tell it was actually over the line until they actually shown the replay. And I was like, why was this not given there for Ona? Because you could see the ref was looking right directly at the goal. The linesman in itself was a little bit behind, but I'm sure from where the linesman was, you'll be able to see where of course the ball went, because it was clearly there over the line, especially when you could see Hannah Blundell herself, who was behind the ref, could see that it was over the line itself. So I look at things like that and I think, is there something more you could truly do? Because I know VAR could take a long time to implement there into the WSL, but maybe to have like some kind of watch like a ticker, just so you can, so the ref can have like it goes off, for instance, or vibrates when it goes over the line, for instance.
You mean goal line technology?
Yeah.
I mean, what's your view on that? Because obviously, with Catherine, because with the WSL, you know, like Everton will remind you, some of our stadiums are really more parks with porta cabins. So, I mean, that's the issue, isn't it, with some of these technology options?
Well, I mean, the reality is that a lot of women's football has infrastructure issues, because there's really no, you know, there's been a lot of money poured into these really, really big stadiums, which some clubs may be reluctant to use because they can't fill them and the atmosphere would be ruined. But at the same time, the stadiums that they do use, as you state, wouldn't really be fit for purpose for putting something like VAR, or, you know, Emma Hayes talked about it at the beginning of the year. And the reality is you can't even put VAR at Kings Meadow because it just wouldn't have the infrastructure, from my understanding. I don't know how goal line technology, if goal line technology would be easier to implement, but it'd be nice to know how the FA is making these decisions about trying to implement this technology in the women's game, like how expensive it is and the reality. But I don't know. That one seems like, again, looking back at that thing again, I would love to see where the assistant ref was looking. Like if they got distracted by something within the play, which technically they shouldn't be getting distracted if there's shots on goal. But because that one just seems flagrantly over, like a bounce in and a bounce out, and from that angle, you would expect it to have been picked up. So no, I mean, obviously you got Lansell here just saying goal line technology needs to be happening in WSL, and that could have cost us the game. It's a weird thing because obviously the Russo scored straight afterwards, so you can almost hear the people go, "What are you worried about? What's the problem?" But that's not the point. Yeah, you know, and it you know, and if you look at it in great detail about what happened when they celebrated Russo's goal, they almost semi-consoled Ona, who doesn't score that often, and that goal will not be counted for her tally, and she, you know, and she deserves to be credited for that goal. But I do wonder, Maze, and I'll pose the same question again to you, Catherine, that is it again going back to the idea that like you have proper football and you have the women's game, that there's an element of, if that was, you know, last night at Everton, you know, that would be all over the front pages. Whereas because it was a women's game, everyone's like,
Yeah, it definitely would have been more published if it was the men's game, because you're seeing a lot of wrong decisions at the moment when it comes to the men's game at the moment, and Premier League managers are demanding apologies from the referees because there is situations what's gone wrong. And for me, when you do have a bad decision, it does need to be noticed. It does need to be shown on social media, regardless if it's the men's game or the women's game. There is actually, I was speaking to one of my friends who live in America. He follows MLS, and they have a TV program every week to show all the wrong decisions the ref has made on that week. And I look at it and I think, imagine if that was in the WSL, how many wrong decisions would there be?
And the problems with that program is
it just seems that's got to be in the US. That seems so American. Let's blame officials for everything. We'll make a show about it, but we won't cover the women's game. women can't, like, there's no demand for that. But we'll have people like scroll through. I mean, I think part of the reason you didn't see more in the paper, well, there's I'd say two main reasons, but the first is Russo scores. So in the end, like, did it change? I mean, any bad decision will change the course of the game, but there's, you still got the goals. So, I think if Russo doesn't score, then that becomes a really big deal, because United could have lost, and that could have, I mean, there's still 5 games to go, but like, that can be the in the end, because it's so close, the decider, or one of the mistakes that leads to a decider for a Champions League spot or not. I think the other thing is, when you look at the media within the UK, and to be fair, this exists almost everywhere as well, like, a lot of media organizations have expanded into women's football, but unlike their male counterparts, who might have 1 or sometimes 2 journalists covering one team, they often have 1 journalist covering everything. Like, Tom Gary seems, I don't know how he does it, but he seems to be at every single game covering everything in the WSL. So, if you have more limited resources and you're going, okay, well, United won anyway, like, this is definitely a conversation that could be had, and I could put it in a future article, but am I going to write a whole article about how, Ona didn't get her goal? Probably not in the priorities. But yeah, I think you go back to the point of, like, is women's football valued less? And this is arguably one of the places where you see how it is valued less. Like, if we had true equality, women's football would get the same resources, at least at an officiating level, as the men's game. And it doesn't anywhere. The VAR is not implemented. When there are refs, in a lot of jurisdictions, the refs are not of the same, they're not classified of the same caliber as those on the men's side, which means they tend to have full-time jobs. Unlike, in the Premier League, there are full-time refs. That's their, so obviously you're not going to have the same performance out of a ref if they're, this would apply to almost any position that you would have. But if you're doing a full-time job and then trying to do what should be a profession on the side, you're not going to be, like, you're going to be tired when you get to it, especially for a professional. I can see why the FA or why any league would be hesitant to try to equalize that when you look at the difference in equality that exists between the men's and the women's league. Like, I don't know how much men's refs are paid in the Premier League, but I would assume that it's not insignificant. So, what would happen if if they equalize it and the person that's the most paid is the referee? Which could happen if you have something like a Birmingham playing, who don't have a very high salary cap. I don't know. I think you have to look at the resources, but at the same time, the women's game is speeding up so quickly. And one of the things that seems to be lagging is the quality of refereeing. And that's everywhere, where referees are just, even in jurisdictions like the UK that have implemented the women's refs in the PGMOL, they're not being trained quick enough to keep up with the demands of the professional league. And what it does is it reduces the professionality of the FAWSL.
Well, this is it. And I mean, the thing is as well, it's meant to be the top league. We're getting Sky Sports, behind it. But the referees, just a few factual statements in the men's game. Obviously, Maisie, you'll be aware as well that you've got the Premiership and the Championship, League One, League Two, and then what's known as a National League, which is like colloquially known as non-league, so out of the league system. Mm-hmm. The highest grade referee that can ref a women's match is League Two, and there's only a handful of them that have done it. I've seen a couple of League One refs, but normally they're midweek games in London where I think they've just got stuck and they've done it. And I think that is what's letting a lot of people down. We'll play a video in a minute of the worst refereeing decision that I've ever seen in my life. That just did really turn me into a bit of a very angry person for a short period. But as you say, when you think about it more logically, are these people getting thrown to the wolves? If you're used to reffing National League or League Two, and suddenly you're reffing, for example, the Old Trafford game next week, which will be that level of ref, I know assistant ref, Sean Maciellis has done the assistant ref, and she's a Premiership ref. But for the actual refs themselves, that's the level. Are you going to bottle it? Is this part of the problem before you even start looking at technology?
Yeah, definitely. And I think if we are going to ever look at technology, I think we do need to look at investing a lot more into the referees. I know you said that we've had League One, League Two refs, and I don't really see any early decisions from them kind of leagues, to be honest. So I know the Premier League refs are bad enough, but I think, especially knowing that you are getting these these like deals, with the Sky, you've got BBC, and of course BT invest in the Champions League knockout games. I don't see what the problem is in these investments, what you are getting, because Barclays is investing as well next season, as well as investing into the Championship. Why not put, for instance, even 20% into the referees, just to give them a little bit more wages so we can attract these Championship refs, these Premier League refs, for instance, because I think if the refs aren't getting the kind of training, if they're not in that, just as Catherine has said, that full-time employment, they're not going to get better. They're just going to remain the same. And these decisions are just going to constantly go on and go on and go on. It's just going to be like a little bit of a circle. So I think unless the refs change, I really think it's the bad idea putting VAR, any kind of technology in there, because you need to improve the bottom before you look at going higher and higher.
No, definitely. And obviously, as TJ said here, with a lovely spelling of Chelsea, obviously quite current. I think, Chelsea is a good way that some of the opposition call them. But yeah, Chelsea and Arsenal match, there were pretty two bad non-calls on handballs as well. So obviously, we know it doesn't just happen to United. But if it was interesting, actually, I've actually brought the figures up here for Premier League referees and how much they get paid. And this is from Sport Bible, based on the 2020-21 season. I'll be mischievous. It's a Friday night. We're all chilling out. It's fine. I appreciate it's earlier where you are in Canada, Catherine. How much do you think the Premier League gets paid? How much is the Premier League basic salary?
I would say in the 6 digits, but I might be overstating it.
So what do you want to go for?
I'll just go to the bottom of the 6 digits, 100,000.
And Maisie, what about you? You probably researched this, knowing you.
I haven't actually researched it.
I really should have researched it.
I should have. I really should have.
This wouldn't have been fun. Then it wouldn't have been
if I was going to guess, I'd probably say 85.
Okay, so we got 85 and 100 grand. Any ones in the comments? Anybody want to join in on that?
I know there's 17 full-time refs in the Premier League, and I know that some of them, the reason I'm giving that amount is because I know some of them, like there's an Australian ref who became a full-time ref, and he's got a PhD in like microbiology or something crazy. So I would assume to attract these people away from their actual full-time job to go, you'd need a high salary. That's why I give that.
Okay, so I'll just see if there's, I don't think we've got many guesses there, but I got no idea from TJ, but here we go. Basic salary for official referees in the Premier League vary, with a starting salary of £70,000 and an upper end salary of £200,000.
Okay. So this is the thing: is if you bring this caliber of ref into the women's game, the highest paid person on the field will be the referee.
Well, yeah, possibly, unless he's reffing Chelsea with or she's reffing Chelsea with Penel Harder, but it'd be quite tight because I think that's the highest. That's the world record, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. Kerr re-signed. I'm guessing she might have gotten close, but yeah, so. And the other thing is, like, if you're good, you can't have some matches that have high caliber refs and the other ones that have lower caliber refs. If the FAWSL has to have the same amount everywhere, because if not, it won't be fair to the point where almost corrupt. So you're going, okay, like, is this, yes, there's been Sky money, yes, there's BT money, but is giving somebody who's an official $200,000 a year a fair way to spend that $20 million when, the National League needs to be developed more. The championship should technically be professional. There are still players in the FAWSL who barely make a living wage. So, there are questions here of like, is the best place to invest in full-time referees, or should we just try to train them better and give them more tools, or maybe even add a referee for each game that could use that could be trained in technology? Is that the best way to?
Well, this is it. And I haven't really got the background in the men's game, but I know Maisie has. You remember the thing that UEFA did with the guys with sticks that used to stand there? Did they ever give anything? I never saw them, like, we were there to stop something. They were there, wasn't they? Went before was it in the Europa League and the Champions League? They had those additional refs, and they had these little sticks, and they were there to try and catch something that the referee or the assistant ref missed. Did you ever see them catch anything?
No, you never really see them catch nothing, to be fairly honest. And when you even look at the men's game in itself in terms of VAR, you look at some decisions what's been made and how VAR can class it as a deemable foul, or they class it as nothing. So I look at things like that and I think, well, if, for example, this came into the WSL, these refs aren't trained, how would they be into the VAR when already the Premier League isn't already dealing with VAR very well? Is this going to struggle for referees who aren't in this kind of full-time employment, just like the current Premier League refs?
I mean, we'll look at solutions as well. I mean, the interesting figure, and I won't make you guess this, don't worry, is on the same article. It tells you the assistant referee salary, and it's quite a big drop. It's the assistant referees in the Premier League have a standard salary of 30 grand, which is still nothing to be upset about. But, I've always said and thought about, well, maybe the problem is because being a fan, going up and down, the country, the first thing I see, to be fair, and when there is a contentious decision, is that the referee looks at their assistant and their assistant goes, "Don't look at me. I don't know," because they're at a lower level than they are. And one of the things I've always thought of, if you could have higher level assistants, which clearly are cheaper, maybe that's a solution. What do you think about that, Catherine? So you have a more experienced assistant, which might help the person in the middle.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, the person in the middle is the one making the decision. And the person in the middle, like a lot of even that call technically should have been picked up by the person in the middle. That you're supposed to be feeding off each other. So having somebody with more experience on the sideline will be limited if the person they're reporting to doesn't have that experience in the center and doesn't know or have the eyes to actually pick up those mistakes. I would really like, they appointed Bibiane Steinhaus to the PGMOL. I'd really love to know what the progress is of that appointment and what the plans are to actually increase the level of the refereeing, because, that might give a lot of answers as to will there be solutions to these issues we're having right now. But realistically, the only way that you get better refereeing is to get better training and to get better experience. So you either have to bring people who are the top into the women's game, and by the top, I mean the top level refs in the men's side, which don't feed across, or you have to train those that you have better. And, there's really not a lot of news on either end if that is in the works in the future, other than this appointment.
It's an interesting bit of trivia, but the referee on the weekend was Lucy Oliver. Sorry, Lucy May is who she goes by in the women's game, but she's Michael Oliver's wife, the Premiership referee. so you do wonder whether or not her husband can give her some help. You're right. I think it's it's one of those things, but because that moves on to the next thing, doesn't it? In the sense of VAR Lite, which I actually found out researching this show. Also, as Vicky just jumps in there, says they said they were looking into it, but the issue is now how quick they can implement the changes, as the league is changing more quickly and the stakes are much higher. They're looking into VAR Lite, which has another term apparently, because it says in brackets on the FIFA website VAR Basic.
Yeah.
which if you didn't want to talk about the way the women's game is held in regard by the governing body, that's been a good example. So as far as we can tell with VAR basic, what it would be is 4 cameras that could be positioned around the pitch, 4 freestanding cameras, and a referee literally on an iPad sitting in the stands.
Yeah, I wouldn't even do that personally, but
so we'll go around there again, Maisie. So what's your view on that? I mean, I've got a laptop and I've just shown you that was over the line, so surely it'd be fine, wouldn't it?
Well, I wouldn't do that, to be honest.
What are the issues you see with it? Is it because you think that they might just bottle it because they've got a whole crowd around them and they're holding a little iPad to have a looking at it or a little monitor? Or is it more that you think they're just going to go with the ref in the middle because it's an easier decision?
I think no matter what, when you are making a decision on the pitch, it should be the referee's decision. The referee should have the final decision. When it comes to the little monitor or whatever, you can sometimes get that overruled, for instance. But I think regardless, it should be the referee's decision. So it's a tough one, to be honest. I feel like I think it's always just going to be implemented by the person in the middle.
So would you bring in any technology with the current situation?
I would bring in goal line technology, but in terms of everything else, I don't think it's the right time to do it.
Okay, what do you think, Catherine?
I mean, like we kind of touched on it, or I kind of touched on it earlier. Like you can't implement VAR if you don't have the stadiums and the infrastructure to do so. And you said some of these are. I mean, where Everton plays basically looks like they're in.
It is.
I always look for sheep in the background.
No, it's Liverpool. Just people. That better be good.
I will. I'll do the journalistic thing of remaining neutral. But like, if you implement any type of technology, this is something I used in my old work. We used to say like the implementation of technology is limited by the user. So if you're having issues with your referees because they might have less experience or they might be showing up to their games more tired because they have had a full day's work, or they're trained less than their male counterparts, or in this situation, the technology they're using is not as advanced than full VAR, then you're going to be limited comparative if you're comparing it to the men's game, which is what we've been doing since the beginning. As for having an iPad in the center, like I think personally, if I was doing it, like in the NHL, the way that they review every single on ice game is they have a situation room in Toronto. And these are just refs that are literally trained in this. And for every single game across the league, they review it. So they have trained professionals who know how to use the technology, who are in one place. So you don't have to have a person with an iPad at every stadium because it's centralized. And they know exactly how to use that technology. I don't know like if that would be possible, but I would do something similar. You literally have people who are just trained in how to use the technology, who've had simulations on how to review it, and who are tuned in with every single game. And when the ref needs a review, they can go in and they can do it quickly because that is their only job.
Yeah, and I like that idea. And I think that, I used to watch a bit of NFL and they make a bit of a big deal of that about going to New York and where they have a similar overall referee that looks at it. And I don't really see why you need 25 sort of cameras and laser beams and, work out exactly what Sam Kerr's had for breakfast, if you were leading it up. Surely if you could just maybe look at a situation, because it's better than we are at the moment, is use the broadcast cameras that are available. So if it's Sky, you're going to have more than BBC and FA player, okay. And essentially, if they can't make a decision from the broadcast camera, that's a decision in itself, almost like undetermined or something, and you just have to carry on.
And the advantage of both those systems is like one of the places where you lose a lot of experience, especially in refereeing, is when you get to a certain age, you just can't do it because your body physically can't keep up with the younger players. So what they do is they use retired officials who couldn't be skating in the center or who couldn't be running after, I don't know, NFL I find American football so boring. We can be standing around waiting for them to actually do something.
I know, they're very young themselves, actually, most of the rest on the field there.
But you can gain on people who have like decades of experience and keep using them within the VAR setting, and like maybe even training younger players alongside them and saying, this is how you would make this decision. And, you know, they also use ex-players, you know, going, okay, well, these players actually understand how the game works, you know. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I've teased it, and everyone who's a Man United fan will know this. Does anyone want to have a look at the worst refereeing decision I've ever seen in my life, and will probably never see again? It was Kirsty Dowell's finest hour. That's how I even know her name because of it.
I was afraid there for a second. I thought you might have come to a couple of the games that I ref.
Trust me, when you see this, you would have done better. Right. Let's have a look. That was given as a handball. Should we go again while Catherine generates the thoughts? Okay.
Let's do it.
Actually, let me build up. This is a referee who previously has had profiles on her because she's FIFA listed. She's actually got a PhD in the psychological stress of refereeing. I'm not even making this up. And is one of the high flyers in the women's game. Obviously, it was 2 years ago, but let's have another look.
Where's the ref standing?
She's basically, obviously, because I was there, it was...
Because I'm looking at it, I'm wondering where she's standing.
But it's basically just outside the D, so literally outside the 18-yard box. And it was a free kick as well, so you can't even say that they weren't. I mean, that's bad, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't even, like, it didn't even come close to an arm. Like, sometimes there's handballs where I'm like, you know, people have arms and they can't detach them from their body when a ball comes close, type handballs, but I don't even think that touched. I don't know. I think sometimes we might be a bit tough on referees, especially considering in the women's game the difference in support that they may have compared to their counterparts who ref at the top level of the men's game. But
I think the problem is that because I've seen that in real life and it did cost us our game. It skewed my scale for so long because that's so bad. It's very unlikely we're ever going to see that again. I would imagine. But interesting to your point about what you were saying about news coverage. That was on BBC, that was on Daily Mail, that was on mainstream news because it cost us the game. But obviously that was 2 years ago. All right, we've had a pandemic, but nothing's really changed, and that referee's still refereeing. What's your view on it, Maisie? Now you've seen it again.
You brought back bad memories to me. I couldn't believe you've done that to me just when I thought I could forget about it. But you look at it like, I can understand it can be an odd mistake. And when you look at the ball, it was so quick as well. It touched off Zelen very quickly and went up. But you see a lot where handballs are given like up here, down here, on your actual arm.
That was literally
your whole arm, but it's literally on your chest. And the thing is, when you can't score off that place, if that is illegal, the penalty should be standing. But technically, you can defend and you can score off your chest. You see a lot of people score off the chest. So how that was given as a penalty, I really do not know, to be honest. I don't know, but...
As Vic's reminded me, because it felt like a loss. I think it was a draw in the end, but it certainly was one that we were winning because of it. But yeah, the interesting thing, I suppose, and just sort of trying to look at this and just looking at some of them more in the comments as well. Chloe asks here, is goal line technology going to be in the women's Euros this year at all stadiums? Yes. But then, of course, it's a good point because a lot of these, I don't know, maybe Catherine might know this. You don't really get crossover refs in tournaments, do you? They are now more women-specific, female game specific refs. So nobody's going to have experience using full VAR before the tournament, then, are they?
Well, so this was the issue at the last World Cup. Like, not only was there a lot less experience when it came to the use of VAR, but the players also didn't have a lot of experience. And then to boot, FIFA decided to trial the new goalkeeper rules. So anybody who's Scottish will attest that that was disastrous for them. And then after that game, the rules were actually changed. I'm talking about like the goalkeeper being able to move, which was something that had never been implemented before. I know that definitely for FIFA, and I think UEFA works the same at the moment. They tend to try to promote women for women's tournaments to have more equality because there are very few. I think Bibiane was really, and then there's the French ref. There's only 2 or 3 refs who've actually done top, and I don't even know if this has been done at the international level, but who've done top men's games.
I can name one. For the men's. It was a World Cup qualifier before the Euros, and there was a female ref. It was for the Netherlands game.
Okay.
Was it? I think it was that. I'm going to have a go at pronouncing her as well. I can see her face, which is awkward because
I can't remember her name, but I can't remember her name, but I can just picture her face. But I actually thought she was pretty good in terms of her decisions, and she was quite stubborn, let's just say, because we see a lot of diving in the men's game. So she wasn't giving these like silly fouls. She was basically like, get up.
Stefanie, I'm going to butcher this French. I do apologize, Catherine. Stefanie Frappart, I think she's the one. I've seen her. She did a Super Cup final. I think she refs the men's French league. Possibly her.
That's the one I was thinking about. I'm terrible with names, so I never remember them. I do
remember. Go on.
But your original question goes back to like, it's just going to be women, and most of them have not used VAR, and it goes back to the fact that even though it's supposed to be equal, there's differences in evolution because there's difference in opportunities. Not only are women refs generally trained less because they don't tend to ref at the highest level like their men counterparts may have the opportunity, and yes, that's changing. You've had a couple of exceptions, but for the most part, but also like women's seasons are shorter, so you're probably going to ref less games than your male counterparts, and you're going to have access to less support than your male counterparts. In the long run, that accumulates. And I think that's where the gap has to be closed. The training has to be equalized. The amount that you're supported has to be equalized. And you can't be throwing new technology that isn't standard for you're making it unfair both to the players and to the people that are officiating them.
No, completely. And I do remember watching I think it was a Super Cup where Stefanie, as TJ's done it there, so everyone can stop me trying to butcher the pronunciation. And I think that went to penalties. And I remember even the commentator, who was male, said, didn't she do brilliantly because it's penalties and she's kept up with play and kept her fitness, because she managed to do 120 minutes following the men's game.
But realistically, she wouldn't be allowed to ref at that level if she didn't have the fitness level. So
yeah, but it wasn't said in a bad way. It was almost meant to be a compliment. But I did think it was one of those really. And I think TJ's mentioned here as well. Apparently, she was one of the top refs in 2019 as well. But the funny thing was, I suppose, is that we were looking at refs like we've looked tonight, and we had a game midweek. And I thought, is this going to provide me with a third clip to show everybody? And actually, it didn't. It was crap because we should have won it. But I can't tell you the referee's name, and I can't really think of anything that he did. And that's the way it probably should have been, isn't it? It was that wasn't the worst thing.
Here, I was thinking you'd have enough material to submit a job application for that MLS show.
Only the fact that I can name drop NFL, but it would end that very quickly on that probably. But obviously, so moving a little bit more to what happened on Wednesday night, it was one of the games that, so I can't even say the word. I'll practice. We drew. It was one of those, and it was funny because I actually wasn't there on Wednesday. It's one of the only league games I missed this season, but it still hurt watching it on TV as much as it did. Well, I assume being rained on like they were on Wednesday night. What were your thoughts of the game, Maisie?
I was watching the game in itself because I watched it on my phone. And the first half, we did have many chances, but the thing was for me that we just simply didn't put them away. There was a couple of chances from Ella too. A couple of chances there from Russo as well. I even recall one from Martha Thomas. So we did have plenty of chances, but we just wasn't clinical enough there for me in the final third. I actually do think that, like, of course, we've got many injuries, so we needed to play players out of position. It showed on the app that it was going to be Bo Risa playing as a right back, but it turned out it was Katie Zellum playing as a centre back. And knowing that Katie Zellum's already been played out of position as it was because Hayley Ladd's injured, so she's getting played as a defensive midfielder, to come even deeper and to play a centre back, I think she's done a very, very good game, to be honest. I couldn't fault her knowing that she played out of position. When a player gets played out of position, they always say they don't always be at their 100%. We all know that West Ham is a very physical team, so to only concede one, and that was actually from a set piece / corner, bear in mind. She done very well with Diane to not concede any more than that. But I think what was the problem more than anything, it was probably the fact that it was the substitute options, not that the substitute options were poor. It was just felt like that we just went unbalanced in the midfield, and we always know the midfield in a team is always the most important bit of the team, because if you can have world-class strikers, you can have a world-class defence, a world-class goalkeeper, but if you've got an extremely unbalanced midfield, you get quite exploited, and that can cost people quite a few points. I don't feel like there was nothing in particular individually went with them midfielders, but I think knowing that they have had lack of game time together, I think that kind of made it a lot more unbalanced for me. So I would probably say it was just more to the fact that the midfield was quite unbalanced, and that led West Ham to have a few more chances than they should have done.
Completely. And I think, look, Vicky's saying here, defending a 1-0 lead is always dangerous, or, not super comfortable, Mark, which is obviously a famous quote that he made in Spurs, saying that he was super comfortable for most of the game. But obviously, I don't know if you saw the game, Catherine, or any thoughts on the game, Catherine, but the other thing is that, and again, Grace Fisk scored for West Ham with 90 minutes plus 3, and it became a draw rather than a win that it should have been.
Yep. You seem to lose a lot the last couple of minutes of the game.
Do you think
lose points specifically?
Do you think we're paying for the sins in summer? Because we lost a manager, we didn't get a new one until late. A lot of the signings were either the sins of
the summer. Okay, I heard the sins in the sauna, and I was like, I don't know that idiom.
No, the sins the sins in the summer. We lost Casey late. Mark, I have a feeling, was probably signed on a lot earlier than he was announced. But any prospective player, United wouldn't have had a manager if they asked. Do you think having such a small squad has come to bite us on the behind?
I think you're paying for being in a transition year between two managers that aren't caretaker managers, if that makes sense. Like, he inherited somebody else's squad and didn't have, it takes years to build your own squad. So I think maybe it's the sins of the summer, but you could have signed more during the January break, especially knowing how small the squad is and the propensity of injuries in the second half of the season tend to be higher than in the first half. So I think it's more of an issue of, you're transitioning from Casey to Mark this season, and like next year there'll be less excuses because then he's in his second year. The board should have, if they don't sign more players, then you could blame the board. If they do sign players, then that's on Skinner. But I don't know. Maybe I'm a little too generous, but I tend to give new managers the benefit of the doubt the first year when they come in and they're essentially working with somebody else's setup.
Just perhaps practicing my enunciation here. I'll ask you the same question, Maisie. Sins of the summer?
It's a tough one, to be honest, because with Matt Skinner and Casey Stoney, they play it quite differently for me, in my opinion. And a lot of the players who did come in the summer, because we lost quite a lot of players too, the players who did come in, like Bo Rees or Sophie Bagley, for instance, they were signed before Matt Skinner even came as a manager. So whose signing was they technically? Because they weren't Casey Stoney's and they weren't Matt Skinner's either. So who knows whose signings they were? And something what you could technically blame on, because we say the summer, we also say January. Is that just simply poor recruiting from Manchester United? The fact that you've seen last season where we picked up many injuries and that cost us from 4th to 3rd, because we've seen like Tobin Heath injured for quite a while, for instance. So you look at things like that and you'd think that Manchester United would be a lot more prepared. And you would think as well that if I was personally working with Manchester United, I would prefer to
You're young enough, Maisie, to be honest. You could end up there.
It's a dream. It's a dream. But what I would do, it would be better to get a manager, and then if you've already lost so many players, get a manager first, then go for the players who suits the manager's style of play. And that would have been the most sensible thing to do. So Casey Stoney leaves, for instance, she left in May. So then Matt Skinner appointed him in June. And then that allowed then the full summer transfer window for Manchester United to identify the players Matt Skinner wants. We know Jade Moore is loved by Matt Skinner. Could she have come in the summer? Yeah. Could you have said she could have come in the summer instead of her coming in the winter transfer window, just due to the fact she has travelled quite a bit, and we could have had this less issues with Hayley Ladd's injuries. We would have had at least a CDM there to protect us. I agree with Catherine. We should have done a lot more in the winter transfer window. We got 2 loanees and 1 player on a 1-year deal. Loanees. Sorry, go on.
To play devil's advocate, like that might be a gamble on Skinner's part of going, I don't want to use what might be possible future resources to recruit players that might not necessarily be to the caliber that I want them to be, but I could get better players this summer if I get a Champions League spot. Yeah. Because if you get a Champions League spot, that changes the whole game. You're going to be able to attract players that you possibly couldn't have attracted during. So just to play that, I mean, I don't know if that this is purely speculative, but arguably that you would think that would come into the calculations.
Oh, completely. And I think just to sort of link both of your points together, I think Jade Moore, I'm not convinced yet, but also she wasn't fit. She's come back obviously for the first game on Wednesday, but I think, she's been injured for such a long time. As far as I could tell, she wasn't really used for Orlando. She had to use an American idiom, she had a cup of coffee in Atletico Madrid, and that was it. I do wonder about that, and I know Skinner, to be honest, talks about like she's the second coming of Christ sometimes. The way he goes and mentions all that, and I know that she brings an element of dark arts. She said that in her interview that she's good at that, and we definitely need that, because I think to an extent we are too clean cut sometimes. I mean, one of my criticisms of Katie Zenneman, she started doing it now, which is great, is that she used to be like the blue-eyed girl. She would never shout at a referee. She would never get in their ear. She would move away 10 yards. And every other captain, when there's any decision, they would start making slight comments. to the referee. Now, I know we've just discussed about supporting them, but as a fan, that's what I'm looking at. If the opposition captain is doing that and ours isn't, you do feel like sometimes you're losing the advantage. But I think it's going to be interesting for the summer, because what I would say as well, playing devil's advocate, Catherine, is by the fact that these players are still there after January, isn't that Skinner giving them his seal of approval? They become his signings because they're still there. I know he couldn't get rid of everybody.
Yeah, but if you're not gonna bring in players, you can't sell the ones that you have, especially when your squad is small and might get injured. Also, I'd give Jade Moore a bit of slack. She played in the Challenge Cup last year, and that was it. And before that, she was at Atletico in 2020. So, and because that in 2020 in the US, there was just the Challenge Cup, which was like, for Orlando, they didn't even play. So,
I remember, because they had a COVID. They all went to a nightclub, didn't they? And they
yeah, essentially. So, like, in the last 2 years, she's played 4 matches. So that's, she's very talented, but it's going to take her some time to get back to match fitness, even like up here and physically. So I'd give her a bit of leeway there.
No, definitely. I mean, TJ here obviously making the point as well. Why would you get rid of players who need depth? No, I agree. I'm just trying to. I think
you would get rid of players that you could capitalize on to bring in players that are most suited to Skinner's.
Yeah, and I think Mark Skinner. You may not obviously have heard this, but in the past in other shows, I've called him a bit of an unreliable boyfriend. Sort of, he comes in with all these kind of promises and how great he's going to be, and then he really stunk for a bit. And then just when we were getting a bit upset with him as a fan base, around Brighton just before Christmas, he pulled it out the bag and basically got the sort of hot chocolate and flowers ready and sorted that problem out. And then we had a great run before Christmas. January was okay, and then February he went off the boil again. But I must admit, most recently, I do feel for him about the injuries. I mean, what do you think about the running that we've now got, Catherine? Do you think that we'll be able to get that third position?
I mean, one of the blessings that two blessings that you have. The first is that you're not really in any cup. Like, you don't have Champions League. There's really no other cup games until the end of the year, so you can just focus on getting that place. And the other one is you only really have one game that I would say would be difficult to win, and that's the last game of the season, which is Chelsea. Realistically, you can get points off everybody that you're playing, which isn't the case for your adversaries. And like, if you look even at the top of the table, like Arsenal have a pretty packed schedule going forward until the end of the season because they're playing on 3 different fronts. So yes, I definitely think and also you have less players who go abroad internationally during the international break, whereas, next international window, like Sam Kerr's going back to Australia, for during a 9-day break, which is a little bit insane.
For me, when you do look at the games in particular, you do think that they are winnable games. Apart from Chelsea, we always know that Chelsea is a tough test to have, especially when it is going to be at Kingsmeadow, I believe. So what we really need to have, like we have done with Arsenal this season and also Manchester City, we need to have the mentality that we can do it. And I think once we have seen that we have the mentality that we can do it, it helps us massively. When you look at the games we have Brighton, we've got Aston Villa, we've got West Ham again. Them kind of games, you should say they are winnable, but what we also need to do, as well as win the games, we need to look at the teams around us to see on how they're getting on, because Man City don't really have a tough game. Tottenham have a few tough games. And we all know that Reading, for me, this season has been quite an underdog team. I don't think many people has seen that, how well Reading has done. And mathematically, if both us, Man City, and even Tottenham drop points, even Reading could compete for top 3.
Nat's arrived. You can always hear a voice when any kind of Manchester United discussion goes on, both at the at the pitch or off it mentality. I mean, that's definitely a shout, I think. But one of the friends of the show as well, Atanu, kindly sent me this information beforehand. I'm just gonna make Maisie unhappy again by making her remember certain things. It makes me unhappy as well. I'm just rolling with the punches at this point. So all 5 draws that we've had this season, 2-2 at home against Man City. City were down a player in the first half. 1-1 Spurs conceded 90 plus 5, and apparently it was very windy according to Mark Skinner. 1-1 Everton conceded in 80 minutes. 1-1 Arsenal. Arsenal were down to 10 players in the 75th minute and then scored in the 79th minute. And West Ham, obviously, we've just discussed. That's a lot, isn't it? What's your view, Catherine?
You have the capacity. I'll stick to what I said earlier. You have the capacity to win those games. You just can't drop the points at the last minute. And you have to really go in dedicated to actually get all 3 points, because it's so tight at the top at the moment. And when you look at all the schedules, realistically, the top 5 can all end up in the top 3. So you would want to be, I don't know if this is going to be even possible, but I would aim to try to be in the second place going into the Chelsea match.
Yeah, no, I think it's funny because I've started watching a bit of Barcelona, just a dream that eventually we'll get there at some point. And it's funny because they are another level, and they are the best women's team in the world, really, in my opinion. But even in their games, normally the opposition gets one decent shot. I even saw them 1-on-1 in the keeper at one point. But what I've noticed that they've started to do is they go, "Oh my God, I'm 1-on-1 with the keeper and it's Barcelona," and they mess it up, and that's their sort of chance gone. Do you think there's a mentality issue, especially against Chelsea, who we've never beaten, because we've beaten the other 2 big players?
I don't think so. I saw the game earlier. They didn't seem afraid going in. I just think Chelsea are very good. The front 3 that Chelsea have, would any of the front 3 for Chelsea would be the star player of any other team. And when you have Pernille Harder on the bench for half the games to come on as a substitute, that's a force to be reckoned with. So I don't necessarily think that United are afraid as much as Chelsea have had the financial power over the last couple of years to go out and get the best players in the world and pay them to stay, which there's 7 bids apparently. So we'll see if any of the new owners will have the same dedication as to funding the women's game, the women's side.
Yeah, no,
I'm pretty sure Hayes is probably very happy that Sam Kerr renewed earlier this year. Whether the contract will remain valid at the end of the year will be seen, but.
Yeah, they'll get out of it, won't they? They'll I think someone will come in. I think the owner of one of the, I'm stretching my knowledge here, one of the baseball team owners is one of the
Cubs. Yeah, that's one of the front runners. There's like a British Airways guy who wants it. There's also a candy person.
I mean, obviously Chelsea have got Pernille Harder on the bench. We had Martha Harris on Wednesday, Maisie.
We did have Martha Harris, yeah. We haven't actually seen. I think it was the Bridgewater
I'm being
mischievous. Martha Thomas first, wasn't it? Bridgewater was the first time we've seen her in ages.
Yeah, no, I was just saying. I mean, obviously there was a weaker bench there, and I would say
I think we only had 4 subs on there as well.
Yeah, we had Bagley, Harris, Fuso,
and Moore.
Moore. Yeah.
No, this is something that I don't understand. Like, you have a very good academy. Maybe they don't have the caliber, but I would just bring players just so they could experience it. Like, I don't know if there's difficulties in that, what the contractual capabilities are, but I don't understand why more players aren't called up, even if it's just for the experience. Well, this goes across the board, because like City had the same issue at the beginning of the season where they had 3 players on the bench, and he's like, "Oh, they're not good enough for this level." Well, just bring them. You never know. I don't know.
Well, it's funny because I know obviously you're more of a neutral here, but as Vix points out, that's actually quite a hot topic in the fan base. We've been pointing that out. They've won a recent FA Youth Cup. On the same day, they beat, I forget who they played, maybe Villa, don't quote me on that, 14-1.
I think it was West Ham.
Was it West Ham?
Yeah.
No, the Devs.
Yeah, the Devs. I'm sure Devs played West Ham the same day we did.
Either or, but the thing is, like, surely by taking maybe two of the top Devs, like Rebecca May, who's been in the squad in the past, or Poppy Lawson, who is a centre-back, they might have won 8-1 rather than 14. Is it that simple? I don't know, but I think, I keep saying, and as Vix has mentioned here, it was West Ham apparently, and we've had a few on the bench for Reading. As you say, how are you going to get the experience unless you're not there? And Skinner keeps going on about how it's a big jump, and it is a big jump, but you only get experience by putting them in and giving them some time, isn't it?
I mean, for me, it wouldn't even be give them some time. It's literally bring them along so they can see what it takes. That's what I mean by the experience. Like, yes, it might be logical to have more players just in case, but like that type of, if you think you have a player who can make it, but you want to give them that extra push, why not just like literally on a sightseeing tour? I don't know if it's a bit of a crazy idea, but
no, I think we've done that this season, to be honest, a few times.
Yeah. So,
but I think the interesting thing is, there's two interesting things that I found from Wednesday night is we had a midfielder who's never played, and she did well, Katie Zellum, she did. We had a midfielder who's never played in her life in defence. And he chose her to do that over having Martha Harris on there, which I think is curtains for her this season, because if you're not picked over another player like that, and more specifically over a Dev being in that position, and I appreciate that would be a full 90.
But I don't know if that's just a Skinner thing, because he used to do that at Orlando sometimes. He'd be like, why is this your selection? And he just seemed to try to test things sometimes to see if it fit his system more. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, is that where we got? Because when we got a Skinner that arrived this season, and he's toned it down a little bit because of us being us, but he was very sort of like, oh yeah, energy and like, positivity and ions and all that stuff. So maybe he's cut a lot of that out of his game now. I mean, and to be fair, I suppose another thing, Maisie, is that it's not been announced, but we believe he mentioned COVID in the post-match interview. So would you say it could be a possibility that Maria, maybe he would have chosen a different defender if they had a Dev on the bench, but they just weren't in London when Maria Torres-Stottier would have possibly tested positive that morning because they were down the night before?
Yeah, it all depends for me when Maria did test positive into, I think because of with the 14-1 with West Ham, and I know they played on the same day. If it was the day before, then perhaps maybe it could have been a little bit of a different story. Max and May potentially travelled down a couple of the Devs. I think it was probably most likely more than likely that it was a last minute thing for me. And if it is COVID, then I think then could potentially been other players what could have had it, but I'm not too sure because a lot of people are saying it's COVID. Some people are saying it's just a sudden illness. So this is the thing as well. What is a bit frustrating that we never seem to get a bit of an update in terms of the injury. So I have no clue what is going on in terms of Mannion, in terms of Hayley Ladd. All we know is that they're injured. We don't know how long they're injured for, what injury they have got, until we just see them back in the bench again like a couple months later. Oh, hi, I've not seen you for a few months.
I just love that how you sort of put yourself on the bench and you sort of have like Kirsty Hanson look to her left and go, "Oh, you're here. Oh, that's good to see. Good to see you." No, it can feel like that. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the final.
I mean, I do wonder again how much this goes back to my earlier thing that like on the men's side, you might have 2 or 3 journalists for one newspaper covering the game, whereas on the women's side, you have one journalist covering every game. So realistically, like, are they going to is hounding about an injury that was reported to be a long-term one, something you're going to do if you only have 5 minutes with a coach? Not necessarily. Like, you'll ask, and if they don't say it, you might not press because you might have like
a
limited amount of space or time to actually get to these things.
I mean, TJ was saying there about them being opaque. I mean, initially, I used to love that because I saw the logic in it. You know, if you're not aware who's going to be fit, or if you think somebody's fit and they're not, you might prep for a player who's not going to be there at the weekend. Problem is, there when our squad's so thin, they're not stupid. Like that works. I think with much deeper squads, but at the end of the day, you could probably have guessed who we were going to play, with possibly one or two exceptions, based on Reading before we got to West Ham. So I do kind of wish he gave a bit more honesty, because at the minute it feels like a card he's overplayed. Maisie, do you think that's helpful when you're trying to outpsych a manager? But if you lie if you are not clear or full with the truth every time, they're just going to ignore what you say about injuries and prep for people they think are going to play.
Yeah, definitely. You do need to be honest in terms of the fans, who's injured, why they're going to be injured out for so long, but maybe in some kind of way, not being direct with the truth is kind of throwing off the opposition for the following game. That's what I could be thinking. Is it more of a tactful kind of mind to think, if you was obviously coming from Reading and you had like Mannion out for one game, but she's only out for one game, she might be back next game. So it's like you're kind of prepping there for Mannion to come back through.
I wouldn't blame Skinner though. Like, there's no incentive for a manager to give out that type of information if it's to his advantage to not give out that type of information, because really, yes, as fans, you are probably wondering, okay, I'd like to have this, but it could only help the only person it will help is future opposition. So, and if nobody's asking about it, then why would you discuss it, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, I get it. And I think another thing he mentioned, he was weird on the final interview he did on Wednesday after the game, because he seemed quite angry and quite unscripted. I mean, he even said, I think, almost semi-quoting, it's not even like most of our players were injured because of us. They came back from internationals injured, which is true, I believe. But I think maybe I think DJ's saying there, maybe it would be something that might have to be mandated. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's an awkward one. If we had a bigger squad, and and we wouldn't be in the position that we were in on Wednesday, then maybe we'd be less chilled, less worried about it. But obviously, just to sort of maybe bring things a bit to a close, we've gone over because the referee bit got a bit chunky, because you know what I'm like. I love a good discussion on referees. So do you think we will make? If you had a crystal ball now, Catherine, because I appreciate you haven't been on before, do you think two things? Do you think we're going to win in Old Trafford next week at the big men's stadium against Everton? And do you think we'll get third place for the Champions League?
I think it'll be a close game, because I think United's kind of like this at the moment, whereas City's kind of going like this. But it's United, it's Old Trafford, and with a crowd, maybe that'll boost the goals on.
Everton. Yeah. Yes, with Everton, isn't it?
Sorry, against Everton. Sorry.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know. I'm really interested to see what's going to happen with the Chelsea situation, because until that is resolved, finding out who's going to be in the final three, this could lead to Chelsea dropping out of the final three. Emma Hayes can say all she wants about I'm not leaving, I'm not abandoning, but if her players aren't there anymore, will she stay? And so whomever bids for this, what their intentions are with the women's game could make the difference in the long run. But yeah, as for United, I think their best bet is to just think about themselves. You've got 4 games that are going to be really, really important, and it's important to get into that last game in good polling. And the only way that you can do that is by thinking about yourself and not worrying what's going on with City, not worrying what's going on with Tottenham, not worrying what's going on with Arsenal, and Chelsea will be seen. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely doable. These are teams that you have the capacity to win against, and you have the capacity to hold back. It's just not drawing at the very last minute, or not losing focus at the last minute, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, completely. And I mean, Everton aren't very good at all. But as you said, they are ticking upwards a little bit. But I do worry about that big occasion. I think they're going to love that occasion, but I think there might be a bit in the back of our mind going, Christ, if we lose this, what's going to happen? It's a big showpiece game. Maisie, so, but I still think we would win, and I hope we'll get third place. Maisie, what's your view on Old Trafford and the Champions League?
In terms of Old Trafford, it is high expectations. We've only played Old Trafford once before, and that was without fans, so the levels are going to go up, especially the history at Old Trafford. Everything, all the memories, what's ever been there of Old Trafford. It's going to be a big game for the ladies. Personally, I would have liked a few more games at Old Trafford, or not to, of course, disrespect Everton, but to have a Manchester derby at Old Trafford, because
Don't give FA ideas. We play them every week, don't we?
That's true, but we played them 4 times. 4 times this season. But Everton's still going to be a big game, especially knowing that we had got a draw from them last time. There's something that we need to prove ourselves to show that from the beginning of this season, because that's when we last played them, that we have improved as a team. Because we have improved as a team. We're a lot more clinical as a team. It's just the injuries what's really lagging us at the moment. So I'm hoping for a win at Old Trafford. I think we will get a win. And in terms of top 3, I think it will be extremely tight, and potentially it may go to the last game of the season, but we can't allow that to happen, to be honest, because Chelsea is going to be a massive game. But fingers crossed, hopefully, what I'm kind of hoping, if this is the case and Chelsea's already secured the league, maybe they might put on a B squad out for the last game of the season, just to give a little bit more fresh legs out. So that could work in Manchester United's favour.
Yeah, I was tempted with those 2 questions. I was trying to end on a positive, so I resist the temptation to say what I was about to say.
I could say a funny positive. I mean, City could end up helping you with Everton. They do play them twice in the next week. So could you imagine being an Everton that's lost twice to Manchester City, and then you have to go to Old Trafford to meet Man United in the first game where there's fans in that stadium? That would be quite daunting.
And to square the circle, they've actually managed to remove their sponsor from their shirt that was Russian. So if they can do it, give Chelsea a ring, tell them how you did it, and I'm sure that'll sort that problem out.
Still don't understand how they don't have the capacity to actually just print new jerseys without it.
Brilliant. Well, I'll try and pull that to a close, but it's been such a great having both of you on, and great for having seen people in the comments. I think people know Maisie, but where will they find you if they wanted to interact more?
You can find me on my YouTube channel, which is Devils United. I do all Manchester United content on there. So you can catch me through there, and my Twitter channel, which is at 2_MUFC Mais.
Brilliant. And Catherine, again, fantastic having you on the channel. Obviously, if you wanted to know, really pleased to do so. Where would you see some of your content?
I guess my Twitter, although I don't use it as much, but at Footy Paquette. And then if not, I write for the women's game and FTBL.
Fantastic. Give them a go. And actually, the Australian League is the finals the 27th, is it, of March?
So this weekend, they do this weird thing where the final 4 have essentially 3 games to get to the final. The first and the second play each other. The winner gets to the final. The loser plays the winner of the 3rd, 4th match game. And then that winner gets to the final. Does that make sense?
Don't tell the FA that. They'll give you.
But essentially, what happens is the team that basically ran away with it, Sydney FC, has made it to the final, and then they're going to play Melbourne City.
Right.
Melbourne City is going to play Melbourne Victory. So the 2 Melbourne teams are going to have a derby, and those winners are going to go to the finals, which is not this weekend, but next weekend.
So if anyone wants to watch a bit of football, that's quite good. And if you want to work out a team to hate, Melbourne City is owned by Manchester City. So, not that.
It was actually really funny because I did all the preseason media with this year, and Manchester City, when they're so connected, when they did all their media, it was in front of Melbourne City Stadium, like the background. And they had the players were actually asked, like Vicky Lozada was asked, like, what are you standing in front of? She's like, I have no clue. I don't know what this is.
It's definitely a lead to keep an eye on as it's now finishing anyway. But yeah, thanks everyone, as I say. And obviously we'll see everybody again soon. Bye for now.